Pentagon wanted to use their models for warfare and surveillance, and they said no. So they said, okay, well then we're not going to use you at all for anything.
The ones who are more interested in AI, they already don't use billable hours.
If you're really gonna throw client data through something that is vibe coded, it should be checked by somebody that does this professionally.
There is no European AI provider that doesn't store their data in either Google or Amazon. So you're kind of screwed.
The CEO of Replit, he was on a podcast and he said, not knowing how to code is going to be an advantage in the future. Job postings for Replit, all the requirements are computer science, 4 or 5 years of experience, front and back, and all this stuff.
The unit economics don't work right now, and the accuracy for really complex tasks is currently too low.
A good example now is Meta with their assets. Turns out all the data goes to Kenya to be annotated and sorted. All of it, with absolutely no filter at all. Credit cards, naked people, bathroom, everything goes to Kenya and people sit there and sort it and label it to train the model to be better.
What can be manipulated with prompt injections is the intent, the trigger to purchase, right? So somebody could actually make your agent go on a spending spree.
The business model and the advances in technology are fundamentally misaligned. But obviously, if you're billing by the hour, then there's serious misalignment there.
Earlier today, we had another LinkedIn Live session, and this time we went into one of the biggest questions in legal AI right now. Are agentic systems actually ready for regulated workflows? We also talked about why hallucinations become even more dangerous when AI starts taking action instead of just generating text, and whether law firms should be using workflows, agents, or something in between. Let's get into it.
The time changed in America.
Yes. Just last week, and it's different than previous years, isn't it?
I don't think it's the same. I think it's 1 hour forward.
Yeah, we're doing the same now, summertime.
Yeah, you guys have time change?
Yeah.
When? Or you already had it at the same time?
No. I mean, like, really?
Yeah, we have it in Norway. We go 1 hour.
We are in CEST now.
We go 1 hour in front for summer and then 1 hour back for winter.
When?
I don't know. Don't ask me. I just look at my Mac. It's correct, so.
Great tips there.
My Mac and my phone is always correct, so who cares when they change?
Yeah, true. Frode, I want to say I love the shirt.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Very on topic.
Are we live?
Yes, we're live.
Oh,
Frode, what happened this week? In the past 2 weeks?
There's a lot going on. Everybody, I hope everybody followed what happened with Claude in terms of the government contract. 200 million cancelled. And then the government became even more pithy and said everybody who delivers to the government are not allowed to use Claude. Which is
they declared them as a supply chain risk.
Yeah,
right?
which is pretty insane. And then Mr. Good Old Scam Altman came in and said, hey, you can use ours for the government, no problem. And then it backlashed. So I think in a matter of a few days, 2 million people canceled their subscription.
Yeah, and he was walking back on what he said, right? Like they're saying that they're
making back, and then that didn't work. So I guess it just released the 2 new models to try and bury the news. So
but for those who didn't pay attention, what happened between Pentagon and Anthropic?
Pentagon wanted to use their models for warfare and surveillance, and they said no. So they said, okay, well then we're not going to use you at all for anything. The problem is that they have been implemented in the system for over a year. Palantir uses Claude in their systems. So it's not like just switching a light switch and suddenly Claude is out and a new one is in. I would say 6 months, 7 months before you can do that transition. So Claude said they will sue them now for this contract breach. So we will see what happens. They will just find a new excuse for not using them. So we'll see what happens.
How do you think that affects end users of Claude?
Not at all.
I think a little bit.
You think so? I mean, everybody who left OpenAI is now all Claude. So Claude is benefiting from this.
I think And this is a good problem that Claude has, basically, since they took number one place in all the in the most downloaded AI provider, most downloaded app. They had some problems with scalability, so a couple of times they had their servers down for a couple of hours. So that was the problem that they had, because everybody was switching to Claude. But yeah, that's easily solved.
Yeah, they had some issues last week, but that was also in terms of the war, because several Amazon centers were hit. So I think that was part of the reason why they went offline so often.
Yeah, that's one big thing that happened. And the other, we've seen some precedents now being set around how to use AI from the client's perspective and from the lawyer's perspective.
They try, but what are they going to do? They don't have any options. That's the problem.
What do you mean?
Have a lot of options for running. Well, most of people want to run safe AI.
Okay, yeah.
You talk to everybody, they want to run safe AI. So what are your options? Your options are to go offline, have your own hardware, and do it that way. Yes, you can buy enterprise. You're semi-safe. Everybody saw what happened to Stryker. All cloud provider, one single provider, and suddenly you're gone.
Yeah. Okay. Arguably, that can also happen to you if you have. I mean, not everybody has the money to invest, the resources to invest into hardware, right? And then people go and rent their own servers.
Yeah.
Right. And then they deploy stuff there. So you have the same problem. You could be hacked potentially. But if we're looking specifically in, okay, so then what is the difference between enterprise SaaS contract, right? Between the contract that you already have with Microsoft and you've been using for your emails for the past X years, and they've been storing all that email data for years on their end. Right? What's the difference now with using enterprise AI plans?
I only know for Claude, in the enterprise AI agreement and also in the Teams agreement, if you sign up for Teams for more than 5 people, it's actually in the contract that nothing will be used. Mm-hmm. And there is also more security features available, which you as the user can control. You don't have that for the pro subscription for 200 or 100, and you definitely do not have it for the 25 a month.
Yeah,
so that's the biggest difference.
Exactly. So this is the difference, right, between the open the public plans and the premium subscription plans. Yeah, exactly. Not those mid tiers are also not really bulletproof in a sense, but when it comes to data sovereignty, right? If you only look at the criteria of data sovereignty, then you can't really go with.
You are nowhere to go. No, you have nowhere to go. There is no European AI provider that doesn't store their data in either Google or Amazon. So you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. I was looking this week, I was thinking a little bit about, hallucinations are still a thing.
Yeah.
They're not so. There's been
they will never be solved.
There's been now there's this website that tracks hallucinations from Damien Charlatan, and then they've assembled more than 1,000 cases. Like last week was the milestone achieved. More than 1,000 cases where lawyers were fined for hallucinated citations. And now I'm thinking about the agentic systems, right? And I'm thinking if AI can hallucinate text, it can also hallucinate an action, right? Because these agents now, execute actions. Yeah. They basically kind of create a plan for the steps they're going to take, and then they execute these steps. Yeah. And I'm thinking from the perspective, if it can hallucinate text, then it can hallucinate the next action. It can hallucinate the tool call and things like this. So I was looking a little bit into the researches, and honestly, in multi-step reasoning process, these things are really not very reliable. Only about 20% reliability. And the problem is that they're not really able to, the system itself, AI, if it's a 10-step sequence and it makes a mistake in step number 3, when it comes to step 10, it doesn't really understand where it made that mistake. So like all the feedback looping that it does by itself won't really solve the problem in the end. You're just burning more tokens, which could cost quite a lot in these agentic workflows. So I'm thinking, like, how is this really currently, right? Like we're commenting about the current situation. Like these systems are going to be further developed and they're going to improve, of course. But currently, like, how reliable is this for regulated workflows? Because I'm not seeing really, like, in any big organizations to be like really proper agentic systems to be deployed, except in e-commerce for shopper experiences, which I arguably is low risk.
Yeah, that's low risk. To answer your question, you can't. You need a human in the loop. And you need to also log every step it does so you can see. This is not the answer I expected, so you can go back and look. Where did it fail? Did it fail on step 1, 2, 3, or 10? Where does it go wrong? Until you have that system, you're pretty much just winging it and hoping what comes out is correct. And you see it also in coding, right? It will gaslight you and say, yeah, we just installed this. And when you go and test it, it's not there.
Okay, yes, we got into something that is very, very concrete. So you mentioned you need to basically log every single action that it does, every single system interaction it has, every step along the way, right?
Every step, yeah.
Okay, so I've been saying recently, access doesn't equal capability. And I think this is one of those cases. Because, for example, OpenClaw. OpenClaw is an open source code. You pull the source code, you can change the code. So essentially, you theoretically, you can put in some traces. You can code in some built-in functions from LangFuse or Langsmith or whatever monitoring platform, right? And you could be by yourself tracing these things, right? But what I'm saying is access is not capability, is because even though that everybody has access today to pull OpenClaw and literally like run it on their own Mac minis or laptops or whatnot, people are not kind of doing this. But I think that, they're not putting in traces. They're not thinking about how to kind of build compliance in this system. And if you don't have that, like, yeah, you can run it for a lot of different things, but like regulated workflows, like there's rules around this. So yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. It's also interesting to see now Legora, who bought Walter AI, which is autonomous agents doing regular work for law firms. So I didn't have time to dig into Walter AI. Maybe Masai knows something about them. It's a Canadian.
I didn't even know that they acquired Walter AI to expand.
Yeah, they did, because Walter AI had two of the largest law firms in Canada as the clients.
And so how does autonomous agents in legal space look like? Like which function of a law firm does it take care of? Or
I don't
just
know.
Everything?
We have to look at Walter AI once we're done and find out what they do.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot though, like stuff like going off and doing research, looking through lots of data, stuff like that, right? And also, especially for research stuff, and a lot of the stuff that I can do in a law firm will be like first pass, you know what I mean? So get like 80% of the document there or 95%. So the lawyer's still there in the loop, obviously. Like if the lawyer doesn't like not work anymore and the agents do the whole thing, that's a bad idea, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you get like if you're doing mergers and acquisitions and you have to do due diligence documents and it's like 20,000 pages of documents, I think AI is pretty good at going through that and telling you, hey, you should look at this document and that document and this document. I think it cuts down a lot of the work that was just inefficient for a human to be doing in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But that's like AI in general, right? You can achieve the same thing with a deterministic workflow, like hybrid, right? So you define which steps are in the sequence and you use AI for some of those steps with a goal of, achieving all these, pointing the human towards what is important. So the human saves a lot of time and so on. Like But when you're thinking of an agent like full-on autonomous system, in a sense that like AI kind of intercepts the request, and then it basically creates a sequence of steps for itself on the fly. That's what this is where I see the difference between these autonomous agentic systems and then basically workflows where you still decide what are the steps in this workflow, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I'm looking at. Where is it useful right now?
I still think something agentic is useful there, right? If it's because say you get the due diligence stuff, it's like 100,000 pages or whatever it is, and it finds something on page 20,041, and it doesn't.
It will never read 20,000 pages. That's the problem.
Or imagine
you gotta break it down and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine you do agent teams and you break it up and you do like a swarm or something, right? And you have 100 agents that go over, or 10,000 or however many. But then it might need to go research something. You know what I mean? Like if it's deterministic, you can say, hey, go through over 100 pages and summarize it. But if it reads something on page 14 and it doesn't know what it is, it might need to go and go search some other source, right? Whereas this is a bit more agentic. And then obviously you have a sandbox so it doesn't go and like pull open clause skills and pull that into your environment and destroy everything, obviously, right? So but you control what sites it can go to and that kind of stuff. But I think it's still, I think for legal work still it is useful just because there's limitations to deterministic workflows. And then I was seeing the thing from Stripe like developer blog, basically. They posted this thing where they said they had it was something like 1,000 commits a week or something that were all done by agents, basically. And obviously Stripe is a really technical team, and they have obviously a lot of people like reviewing stuff and that kind of stuff, right? But they have this loop basically where it's like the agent, like you have checkpoints in the loop. So the first thing the agent does is it makes a plan of what it's gonna do. Then somebody reviews the plan and says, well, either go ahead or change the plan. You know what I mean? And then once you approve the plan, and then obviously you have guardrails in place so it doesn't go and do like terrible things in the plan, right? But I think with humans in the loop throughout the agentic process, I think it's still a really useful and powerful thing, I think.
Yes, exactly. If it doesn't remove the human in the loop, that's the big thing, right? Because I feel like the oversimplified selling proposition for these systems is that they can operate fully autonomously, right?
Yeah.
But I don't believe so, because if you really want to have some sort of real world reliability and usability, right, then you need to have something that you can either check or have it a little bit more predictable. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, in that design, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I think do you know this guy Zach Shapiro?
Yeah.
You know him. Do you follow him
you
on
mean
Twitter
about you mean about the big post that was seen by I think 7 million people, something like that?
On Twitter, right?
Yeah. About the Claude ecosystem, Claude native law firm, whatnot.
Yeah, but he has interesting ideas though, basically. Like his idea is that the value, because a lot of legal tech platforms, what they say is we're going to automate a lawyer's work, and then like the silent thing they're saying is we can replace lawyers, basically, right? But I think like that value proposition is not really the best value proposition. So what Zach talks about in his article, where he talks about how like the idea of what AI can do is help expand the capability of a lawyer, right? Because you can look at, or you can have something that is containing the understanding of something that might be 20,000 or 30,000 pages, where no person could hold that entire like understanding of the entire thing in their brain at the same time. And it just sort of, he talks about it more in the context of augmenting the capability of a lawyer, right? Rather than the replacing it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, what is still the gap between what law firms are open about using internally and how much success are they getting out of it, compared to how much value are they actually getting out of these systems. I'm fairly skeptical about those things, because in every kind of system that isn't designed, and when you're talking about, for example, Stripe, right? Stripe has 14,000 employees, and a huge percentage of these are developers. So Stripe has also built a foundational LLM trained on payment data themselves. So they have like, we can't really underestimate that the machine learning talent that they have in-house. But okay, so their approach is basically, you know, they have designed something. They're not relying on coding agents that are out there. They have designed a workflow internally that fits all their criteria. Their engineers need to be in a loop in a certain moment. It fits how their engineers already work and all of that. But then I'm wondering, how is this really so? Designing such systems, how does this translate then to SMB market currently? Because it's also not that Stripe tried with this and succeeded on the first pass by building a system like this, the coding agent like this, right? So there's also a little bit of back and forth before you get it right. So I'm fairly skeptical that this that the majority of the firms that are very open about how successful, how much value they're getting out of using these agentic tools compared to how agentic are these tools actually, and how much value are they net total really getting out of it, or how much are they then spending double checking what the agents did throughout their autonomous runs.
Okay, I mean, I think it's a sliding scale, right? Obviously, like you could have a workflow where it's like, here's documents, extract these variables, fill these other documents. Like you could have that. That's sort of like on one end, and all the way on the other end, you have like an agent that does the whole thing. That somebody calls the firm, and the agent picks up the phone, and then it figures out what to do and does everything, and it does billing and it does all that, right? It's like the opposite side of the spectrum. But I think there's a lot of value at places in between there. You know what I mean? Obviously, workflows are valuable, and completely agentic end to end just won't really work right now necessarily in a law firm. But there's like little places in between there that I think can be really valuable. I think also, I don't know how much value that law firms get from like agentic legal tech platforms, because I think if you're gonna build something that's gonna be agentic for your firm, it has to be, you have to build it specifically for how you guys work. Meaning you basically have to use at least use a frontier model or a local. You have to work with LLM itself, and you can't really go to like another legal tech platform and expect them to build a workflow that's going to work for the way that your firm operates, you know?
Yeah, you mean in a sense that like you can't really go to a vendor that builds like this legal AI agent solution that they sell across the industry. Yeah, exactly. The more that we go into these agentic workflows, the more it needs to come from in-house, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think
it needs to be custom made. There is no one solution that fits all, no matter where you adopt AI. Everything needs to be custom at one point.
Yeah,
there will never be a platform that covers everything. That's impossible.
How do you view? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that the one size fits all agentic legal AI, I think what their value probably, the strategy for them is probably going after legal services market. Is like, you have a agentic AI that takes care of traffic tickets in New York or whatever, right? And then everybody that's a traffic ticket in New York goes to this agentic legal AI thing instead of, you know what I mean? I think that, because that's more one size fits all. The actual legal problems is kind of more one size fits all, but the operations of a firm is not going to be one size fits all, I don't think.
Where do you think that vibe coding is going to settle? Where is it going to find its place in non-technical legal field?
You know what's funny? I was looking at two things. I have like a list of the top 10 tech founders under 30, and they're all like, they have really technical backgrounds, because I think people are selling this dream of like, oh, you're gonna go on Replit or you're gonna go on Claude Code and you don't need to know anything about software or code. You can be completely non-technical and you're gonna build like the next billion-dollar company or whatever, But it's not really true. I think the more technical you are, the more you're gonna get out of these tools, right? Because you understand what's going on. And all the top CEOs that are building these multi-billion-dollar tech companies, they all come from technical backgrounds. And I think it was funny, I saw on Twitter, right? The CEO of Replit, he was saying that he was on a podcast and he said, I think not knowing how to code is going to be an advantage in the future, right? And then somebody goes and they find the job like postings for Replit and like for requirements for Replit. And all the requirements are computer science, 4 or 5 years of experience, front and back, and all this stuff. So I think being technical becomes more important, I think, as things progress, and not less important, probably.
Yeah. I feel like that is in the... Sorry, go ahead, Frode.
No, he's right, but they need to sell the hype, right? So
yeah,
that's the value prop, right?
Yeah, it's the of course. Well, if he's the CEO of Replit, of course he's gonna say that. He needs more users.
He has to say it.
Yeah, of course.
But I think we will see a change in where maybe junior developers will disappear over time. And
how do you become a mid-year or a senior developer? Or you go straight from university to staff engineer?
you go to school and get more debt. That's the only choice.
Right?
No, but I think we will see a change that where junior developers will eventually disappear, and you only have senior developers checking what your coding agents have done, making sure it's legit and safe. I think so. It's just my guess.
I read an article about this in Law, I think. I think it was the Zach Shapiro article where he was saying that he's basically saying, like, as technology advances, the middle gets cut out,
Yep.
So like you have in law, you have like big law is going to be fine because they have this big prestigious name and they're going to work with Boeing and Nike and all these people, right? They're going to go to big law. And then small boutiques are going to be fine because they're going to find like some niche and then they'll use AI to be really efficient and all that kind of stuff. But everything in the middle is going to suffer a bit because they have too many people to necessarily be a boutique and adopt quickly, but they're not big enough that necessarily like Boeing and these huge companies want to work with them, right? And I think probably so there was that aspect, and then also the aspect of in these firms, you're gonna need less like first year attorneys that come in because a lot of times the first years that come in, they're doing like grunt work, they're doing research, and they're like going and finding papers and stuff like that, right? And you're not really gonna need that. You're gonna have AI do a lot of that stuff, and you're gonna need people that are like really good, that have good like judgment or intuition or whatever it is, and you'll probably hire less people, but they're gonna be more skilled at their job. I think in software, probably the same thing, right? You probably have the companies are probably gonna hire like that kid who was 13, 14, who founded his first company when he was 14 years old, and he has the experience and stuff like that of doing a lot of software stuff from a young age. I think you end up, instead of hiring 100 like engineers or junior engineers out of university, you probably hire like 5 or 10 kids like that, right? And instead, probably.
What happens to everybody else on the labor market that is not top 10% of the industry?
Who knows? I mean, look at what was it now? Atlassian firing 1,600 people because they want to focus on AI.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Nobody fires people after they have already successfully implemented AI and had really good results. Everybody fires people in preparation for AI to actually pay the bills.
No, it never works. We've seen it before. I mean, what was it? Klarna did the same.
Yeah, many others. Like you had Baker McKenzie now. Like everybody's firing people up front.
Yeah.
Because AI will at some point be embedded enough in their business to actually, be able to replace these people. But that's like, don't you wait to a point where you kind of see the returns on this investment before you start firing people? I don't know. I think it's just restructuring. I think that I don't know. Like I've read this article from Financial Times that was like assembling 6 or 7 bigger labor market researches of the past couple of years, and we haven't really seen massive differences in how many people lost their jobs over the past years, considering that we're also in not a very favorable geopolitical situation as well, right?
Yeah.
We had COVID, now we have other things.
It doesn't help.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're skipping that.
Yeah, we're skipping that. We don't want to be banned.
Yeah. But
But I think in terms of Atlassian, I think it's just an excuse to get rid of people. They see we are too big now. So let's implement AI. We can fire 1,600, 2,000 people, and we'll see. If we fail, okay, we'll hire some back.
yeah, I think we talked about this last week also, because it's a cover up basically, right? As you say AI, because you have too many people. Because we talked about how in
yes, we mentioned this briefly. Yeah.
We talked about how Facebook they had like 5 product managers working on one button or something like that, like just ridiculous amounts of people in the business that are not really doing anything.
Oh yeah, didn't they also fire the guy, the 19-year-old they bought?
No, that wasn't. No, there was I think a media outlet from India. They misreported it. They were saying that
wrong?
Yeah, it was wrong because they were saying that they not that he fired him, and that I think he's 28 or 29, but they were saying not that they fired him, but that he was like moved to a different section where he doesn't have any power to do anything or whatever. But they misreported it, and then Twitter got on top of it, and everyone started saying a bunch of stuff. Yeah, and then they posted a selfie together. Zuckerberg and Alexander Wang is the
Alexander Wang. That's right.
Yeah.
Let's wanted to discuss one thing. Yeah. So I've been discussing this with multiple people recently. Why do you think everybody's so afraid of AI providers training on your data? And what do you really think that if you look at the AI provider, right? Internally, what is the difference in data processing than it would be, for example, with any other SaaS? Like internally, what are they doing so differently with the data, except for that there's an AI model that needs to be trained on some data, right? And we know that we have like enterprise plans and we have the other plans, but what else is it different with the actual process of training the data that gets people so afraid?
Well, can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
What because I know there's some level of synthetic data that's used to train the models.
Yes.
How do you know what that percentage is? Because
you don't. I mean, like you don't, right? Like this is not publicly available information.
Could you guess? Would you say it's 50-50 if you had to guess?
I wouldn't guess because like I have literally no idea, right? And this is also not something that's like steady, that number, that percentage, right? Because I don't know, probably 2 years ago they were able to get more their crawlers that were going over the internet were constantly picking up new data, right? But now that's kind of depleted, so they need more data. So I guess it's more and more synthetic data, but they're also embedding themselves in different industries. So I mean, like, for example, Starlink had a great one. They they all of a sudden had a toggle right in their console about the basically all the data that goes through is used to train XAI's models.
Yeah.
So this is how they're also gathering the data. They don't necessarily need synthetic data.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you know that two of the biggest companies, like with young founders, they do data labeling. So Scale AI, obviously, that acquired by Meta, Alexander Wang's company, and then this other company, Mercor. You've heard of Mercor?
No, I haven't heard of them.
Nope.
They do it's MERCOR. They do it's data labeling services. So basically, like a lawyer will go in, they'll pay the lawyer whatever $100, $200 an hour, and the lawyer will just sit there and say like, this is a good output, that's not good, etc., etc. And then they sell those those labeled data points, they sell them to OpenAI and Anthropic and all this stuff.
Yeah. So the supply chain is huge with AI and machine learning companies. Yeah, there's different providers. Like not everything that is being done on this data is being done in-house. Of course, they have like outsourced a lot of different parts of it, and especially this kind of data labeling and those cheap things, right? Content moderation, things like this. There was a lot of Kenyan workers being hired for that, and in Nigeria. Yeah, so I think that there's a bit of a misconception around this model training, because I feel it's coming from the fact that some lawyers or some people still feel that, you know, once you talk to the model, once you have a chat in ChatGPT, then while you talk to it, it's being trained on whatever you talk to it about. But that's not really how it works. There's like, as you said, this from enterprise plans, the data is only being retained for debugging purposes and things like this, but it's not really being put into data sets. But in public plans, the data is actually being put into data sets, then it's being outsourced, being sent to companies that are basically third parties to OpenAI, that are labeling this data, that are assembling it, cleaning it in data sets. And then basically these data sets are being used to train the models. So a few months later, you might see a model spitting out fractions of information that you have provided in the chat, right? But I think that the bigger danger is coming from the supply chain, because the supply chain is much broader in AI providers. So this is where all the risks are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, a good example now is Meta with their glasses. Turns out all the data goes to Kenya to be annotated and sorted.
All of it. You can't opt out.
All of it, with absolutely no filter at all. So credit cards.
Weren't people using this in courts?
No, but it was a big. Was it last week? Was a big write-up on it. Credit cards, naked people, bathroom.
I saw this. Yeah.
Everything goes to Kenya, and people sit there and sort it and label it to train the model to be better. And there is no opt-out in the glasses to say don't.
So, I saw the article. They were saying like people coming out of the shower and stuff like that. It's all in Meta glasses.
Amazing. So you see, it's not actually the model being trained, but it's like all the people that have access to the data in the supply chain. That's the thing. That's the big risk. Okay, yeah. And how does OpenClaw solve this?
OpenClaw. They don't solve it at all, because they send everything to a $25 or $100 subscription, which means all your data is free, available.
What do you think? Okay, so last week I think we saw this agent card coming out, like a Claude plugin. It is basically a wallet for agents. So you can top it up.
Yeah.
And then agent does payments on behalf of you. Now, the hard limit is the amount of money that you've gave it. So that cannot be manipulated. What can be manipulated with prompt injections is the intent, the trigger to purchase, right? So somebody could actually make your agent go on a spending spree. But anyways, this is also quite interesting to me, because now we've seen big enterprises such as, MasterCard, Visa, Santander, quite a few, now being actively involved in creating an ecosystem where these agents get, legal power, because it's purchasing on behalf of their owners. But that's really interesting. I wonder when we're going to see first precedents or first case law around this. Wonder what it's going to be.
It's interesting from the economic standpoint as well, right? Because like the whole idea is, okay, what AI, like what everyone's saying is that AI is going to get smarter and smarter. Eventually, it's going to be smarter than everyone. But from a business standpoint, nothing really changes, because you're still selling to people. So it doesn't really matter if AI is smarter or not, right? But that just changes once AI starts doing the purchasing. Now it's different, because now that becomes different. And then you have to ask, what does AI buy from people, or does AI buy from AI? And then what happens? And it gets weird, I think. So I don't know what's gonna happen. And then you remember, I think OpenAI or somebody came out with the protocol like A2P or P2A protocol where it's like a payment to agent protocol a few months ago, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so now you have Google that came like with MCP is a standard, right? So Google also came now with a standard for this for the architecture for agent to agent payments, and now you have Visa and MasterCard that build the live infrastructure, so these payments can actually already be happening. These things are already live. So like we're seeing the ecosystem assembling. And we're seeing it's already there. So these things are actually happening. You have websites where like agents are selling skills to other agents, like agent to agent marketplaces. Weird stuff. Yeah.
You think there's gonna be like a Jeff Bezos agent, and Elon, one of the agents are gonna get extremely rich?
I think you can see misuse of the system.
Of course.
I mean, OpenAI now has commercials, which I'm going to guarantee you AI making the commercial, what to throw in your face. So it's just a matter of going to Visa and say, hey, all of these purchase agents, they can buy everything from our platform. So you get in this circular economy once again, but this time on what people buy. I don't know.
How do you feel the economics around these agents? Because, for example, these agents execute complex tasks, right? Arguably, they're less successful in those than with simple tasks. But okay, which beats the purpose of actually agentic workflow, because if it's simple, then you can have it in a sequence. But okay, let's leave that for the moment. But basically,
it turns expensive, right? I mean, most vendors now, what is it? Is it $20, $30 per 1 million output tokens?
I wonder, how can you control that in a production system? How do you control that?
No, but let's say an agent is going to go and purchase something that costs you maybe $20, but it spends $50 in API cost just to buy that for $20. You've already spent $70.
This is what you said, Masai, right? You said agent swarm. That's like really a lot of agents on all these pages and stuff. And like I'm thinking, right? So we have net total value in the end of the process, right? You have time, which translates directly to billable hours, to the money that you're spending basically for the people that are doing the task, right? So time does translate into money, but then at the same time you have also all the costs that you didn't have before with the traditional SaaS, right? You have all this cost of this API of these tokens, and there's more and more and more of API calls, because these agents, this is not just like one thing that they do, and there's many different things that they do. And then if they get it wrong, they try to go into loops, right? Which again increases the cost. And the more you want the agent to be successful, the more you need to spend on it. So you ideally wouldn't be limiting the amount of actions it can take, because that again beats the value proposition of the agent.
Yeah, it beats the purpose.
So I'm wondering, right? Like, so for example, Masai, you mentioned this, let's say 20,000 pages, and you need to analyze these pages, right? And let's say that you build a hybrid way of analyzing these pages, right? There are, let's say, deterministic steps married with LLM calls within that workflow, that it's not fully agentic, but it is a little bit cheaper, right? Why would you go with a fully agentic workflow or agent swarm approach in that case?
Because the argument I thought you were gonna make is that maybe people shouldn't use the AI at all. But the argument is like, why not? If it deterministic could be cheaper than agents, basically.
So
Yeah.
I'm saying like AI workflows versus AI agents. Basically, that's what I'm trying to that's kind of the argument that I'm trying to make over the past 2 weeks. Like, it's great that we've seen agents now, and I think we need to experiment with them. But like the unit economics don't work right now, and the accuracy for really complex tasks is currently too low compared to AI workflows that we've been building for the past 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think probably now token cost is going to be easier to control with workflows. I just think the direction that things are going in. I think if you look 5-10 years in the future, we're looking at like agentic systems, and I think like if I was a smaller firm, I would want to have like a sandbox where I can start like, at least experimenting with these agents, so that when you have something that like you can be the first one that knows when something works, right? And you can have like first mover's advantage there. But I think and then I think it also depends on the process, because the better that you can map the process, probably the better that you can make it into a workflow. Because if you're gonna build an AI workflow, it means it presupposes that you know what happens at every step in the process, basically, right?
Yeah.
Where
You have to know much more what happens than if you give the agent the ability to plan steps on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the other thing as well. I mean, if you know pretty well what needs to happen every step of the way, and then workflows are probably better in most cases, I think.
I would say in all cases for now.
Yeah.
Workflows are better because at least you have some control.
Yeah. But I think
you have zero.
The direction is still agents, though. I think when we look 5 or 10 years in the future, probably that's what we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, of course. But then
we need to see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but then you get the question of token costs. That needs to go down. Otherwise, people won't adapt it. It will be too expensive. So what are then the AI companies going to live off?
That and
right.
That and the accuracy needs to go up.
Yeah,
because
of course,
they're not reliable enough yet.
Yeah, they're not reliable enough either. But you see, like OpenClaw, it built everything around the Claude, so you can use the Claude Pro, and Claude said no, that's not going to happen. and they kicked 650,000 people. So how are you going to build your system? Are you going to build it on API costs? Okay, then you need more than one provider, because if the provider is down, your system is down. So it's just I don't know. It's not easy to do or to build, because you need multiple systems. And if you want security, you go with big tech enterprise. If you want it cheap, you go to China. But do you get enterprise in China? Can you trust it? I mean, there is there is a lot to consider.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider, and not it really depends on what is your risk appetite. Also, what's
I would just say do workflows, because you have control and you can measure everything and give agents maybe 1 or 2 more years before you start exploring that full-on scale to take over your business.
But it's good
to the other thing as well, though, is if you like an agent with access to workflows, right? That's a little bit more contained in the sense of like this idea with skills, right? Is that you define a process, and then you tell the agent to call the skill, and they will go and it will just run that process as you've already defined it. Because I think
that's the thing. So and here we have the problem, because if you always skill is not invoked every time. Skill is invoked if the model recognizes that it should invoke this tool, and then it will invoke that skill, right? But if the model, and that's where you have there's 5 different versions of how this could fail. Like one of them is that it invokes the wrong skill. One of them is that invokes the right skill, the right tool, but it passes the wrong parameters, so the execution will fail. So and this is where you're already adding another layer of complexity and another layer of probability, because this could fail. But if you would pack everything, all your skills, if you would compress them, index them, and throw them into agent.md file or Claude.md file, then every single time it would have the correct context. But you have another trade-off there, because then the token window will bloat up, right? The context window is bloating up. You can pass less things. It will start making mistakes much earlier because of the fact that it is containing so many tokens for every single call. So the thing with these systems is like there's so many trade-offs that you actually kind of realize that have to be made. You can't optimize for everything at the same time. You have to make trade-offs.
Well, you can, but it will cost you a fortune in tokens. You see all these doing coding and they blow a 200 a month subscription in a few days. Why? Because they have 25 MD files telling the agent how to behave in every single step.
That's
so
the thing.
You burn your tokens and you're done, and then you need to pay for your API costs. We've seen OpenClaw users spend $3,000 a week. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
But I think like you could mitigate this already, right? Like for OpenClaw, for example, you build another layer that intercepts every call, routes to a small model. That small model identifies what is the complexity of the task, and then it routes it to the model that is appropriate per task. For example, you could already like mitigate it in a way, but then you would have to have multiple models deployed, right?
And you also need somebody to build that system.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's not, we have a question here. Is there anything on the market that can reliably estimate token usage before an agent executes a multi-step workflow? No, that's not possible. You can track it once for each step, but you can't estimate before it does anything. That's impossible, because the agent can go and do 10 steps to give you an answer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. You don't know what is the exact sequence of steps that are going to be taken. Yeah.
No, not before. But you can track them and then get a summary of how many tokens it has used, and you know the price. But not before.
You could probably average or guess. Like if you work with the agent for a while, you can probably like look at what it's done in the past and average it out potentially. But it'd still be a rough guess from your own.
Yeah, if you track it and it does simultaneous tasks over and over, you can have an estimate. But then you need to track it. Most people don't even track it. So how are you going to know?
It's also one thing that this token usage, so what constitutes a token, that also changes depending on the model provider. That is determined on the model level, right? What is a token?
Yes.
So like 5 tokens for Claude doesn't translate to 5 tokens for OpenAI, for example.
Yeah, and it doesn't, and go to China, it's even different because of the language.
Yeah. Yes.
That's why.
Yeah, it is. And that's why that was an interesting conversation I had somebody like 3 years ago, that the Chinese models have a potential to be smarter because of many more letters that they're that they're trained on. And so then you're able to compress more knowledge, more information into it.
I saw the Lovable did like a funny video about this, where they're saying we have an engineer that writes everything in Mandarin because he gets more out of the tokens basically with this. It's like so I don't know, it's interesting.
What do you think? Have you guys seen really successful more agentic deployments in law firms? But I mean, like more like, we have a spectrum of how agentic could you be, and like more on the extreme side of the spectrum, agentic autonomy. Have you seen any like successful bigger use cases?
You know what I think is good about the agentic system? Things like Claude Code, for example, right? I think it makes it a lot more accessible for a lawyer that's non-technical to start building the system. You know what I mean? So like, I'll give you an example. Say you have information about a case that lives in OneDrive or Dropbox or something, or one of these systems, right? And then you also have templates for how you want to fill documents for the firm, for certain motions or whatever. And the workflow is obviously you go to the cloud, you get the data from the case, and then you use the templates that you have, and the agent fills those templates out, right? And you could do it with a workflow, but you have to be fairly technical to go in and figure out APIs and do the hook it up in N8N or do it with HTTP requests or whatever you're gonna do. So that's like it takes a bit more. Whereas a lawyer now can sit down with cowork and say, hey, I have stuff in Box, I have these templates, like help me build a skill that automates this process. I think it's a lot more accessible. I think it still makes sense for a law firm to have somebody technical on the team because you probably want to take it to like a production ready system basically. But I think it just lets them get started so much quicker with these ideas that they have and actually getting them implemented,
Yeah, it's like a faster bridge to how to experimentation. I feel even before, if you wanted to experiment, you needed somebody on the team that would be technically proficient to be able to build many different POCs for you, and then you would see which one makes the most sense. So that would be an ideal world, but people weren't doing that because then you have to pay for somebody to build, I don't know, 5-6 things for you so you can test what works. Now it's much easier. You can come up with some proof of concept quickly, test whether from the operational perspective, this workflow could work. Does it solve a problem? Does it fit our way of, working? Can it integrate with our systems? And then you can figure out quickly, like, what does it make sense investing into? Because if you're like even if you're only one person, you've built this, you vibe coded this for yourself, right? You don't really you don't know what you don't know. And then basically you're evaluating the system from the perspective, oh, does it work? Does it move the data? Does it, does it perform this task that I needed to perform? You don't look at it and say, hey, AI actually forgot to do the front-end validation here. So I'm basically pretty much very exposed to all the SQL injections that somebody can throw into the system. And if somebody basically monitors what is happening in our network, they can find out my exposed API endpoints. In that case, they don't need to take control over my front end. They can literally send an API call that hits my back end. And I'm completely exposed because I have no validation on the back end or the front end for SQL validations, right? AI is forgetting these things. So like, I think that if you're really gonna throw client data through something that is vibe coded, it should be checked by somebody that, does this professionally, I think.
I think, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I think a law firm still needs somebody technical on the team that understands, and not just technical in the IT sense, because you have obviously like MSPs and IT departments that come in and help you set up your tech stuff. But you need someone that has experience working with actual AI systems and knows what has to go into that. But I do like the fact that Claude Code work, the lawyers are a little bit more ambitious that do use Claude Code or like anti-gravity or whatever. It just lets them get started so much faster. And then it also, there's certain things in their workflow that's very law specific, right? Where it's like, there's no way that an engineer is going to know like the small intricate details of how they do things as a lawyer, right? And so if they can just go to Cowork and get like a working POC of a skill or a plugin or whatever that does what they need, then it's a lot easier for the engineer to come in. That way you don't have to do like 30 interviews with people to figure out what they want. They just build the plugin, and then you take the plugin and then you just make the plugin into a workflow. So I think it's really useful there.
Yeah, exactly. That's also like how we're seeing in bigger firms, let's say technical companies, right? They have like product managers, and these people have been creating these developer tickets, right? Putting in words how a functionality should look, how it should behave. And then they were going a lot back and forth with the development teams. But now you have vibe coding, so these product managers can basically, quickly vibe code something, and it's much more understandable how something should be built, and this prevents a lot of back and forth. This is where the money is going, because the engineering time is very expensive, the same as lawyers' time. They're very expensive. So you put those two elements into the mix that are going back and forth until they can sync up. You remove that layer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's
your go-to market is pretty much reduced to zero.
Yeah. Yeah. I do still feel that like there's one thing that we didn't mention today. Maybe we can briefly talk about it, but maybe also next time. There's more written from the lawyers that have been over the past year or so very, very visible in building stuff and vibe coding stuff. They're now also writing about, how the work has intensified for them, how they have much more on their plate, how they're having to actually do their own core profession and upskill for that, and then also constantly thinking about the optimizations, building workflows, fixing them. It's no workflow gets built in 2 days. Then in 2 days you get a bulk of it, and then the last 20% takes the next 2 weeks. So yeah, how do you guys feel about that? Have you heard anything from lawyers talking about those things?
Yeah, I've seen the posts and stuff. Also, just I think the general sentiment is that the legal field is not really necessarily ready for. I've heard people call it like 10x lawyers, basically, right? Like same idea as like a 10x engineer, 10x lawyer that knows how to use the tools and can get more done. I think there's a lot of. I think the nature of the field doesn't really gel well with the new advances, right? Because if you're in a firm and you're billing by the hour and all of a sudden you find all these tools and you're more efficient now, but the firm still bills by the hour, it's like those things have they're misaligned, obviously, right? So I think the business model still has to catch up, and I think probably what you'll see, the people that get ahead are probably going to be the ones that just start their own firms, and just have a smaller firm where they can have the liberty to do or try whatever they want to try. Because I think the business model and the advances in technology are fundamentally misaligned. But obviously, if you're billing by the hour, then there's a serious misalignment there, probably.
This is actually something quite interesting, because I spoke to a couple of law firm managing partners that started a new AI native law firm from scratch.
Yeah.
And there's two mutual denominators. One, these firms were started from scratch. So they didn't go and, refactor the old processes and adjusted them to a new way of doing things, but they literally started from scratch. And the second is that, oh, damn it, now it lost me. No, it went away. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, but they built their own process from scratch.
Yeah, everything is built from scratch.
Pricing model, maybe they can choose.
Yes,
other
exactly. Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. That was the main point that you mentioned. The pricing model is not a billable hour. So
yeah,
it's per project. And arguably with power users, their unit economic is not as strong as it is with an average user, but it pays off. You know what I mean? For example, a firm that processes certain number that processes documents, they limit per engagement. They price per engagement.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many documents they process. And so, yes, you can argue that the unit economics doesn't work when they have a power user that wants to process 20,000 documents. But in real world, there's so little power users at that scale. And most of the people process the amount of documents that still makes a huge economical sense for the firm. So yes, you're going to lose on a couple of clients, but you're going to gain on so many more clients. So the packaged pricing works in that sense.
Yeah. I think if you're trying to be an innovative law firm, like you have to be able to control your own processes and your own pricing model, right? Because you won't really be able to do it with the old processes and with the old pricing model. It just won't really work.
No, you need to change. It's the same as in SaaS now, right? SaaS, look at SaaS pricing 5 years ago and SaaS today. It's the same model, but now it has to change because, anybody can wipe code a SaaS pretty fast for pennies. So how are you going to price it in the future? Same for law firms. You have to move away from billable hours to package systems.
Yeah,
but that's what
you can buy this package for a fixed price, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then that way, the more efficient you get, the more money you make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like I've heard there's an argument from some firms that they say, yeah, we want to save our clients time and we don't want to charge them as much money or whatever it is. But end of the day, everyone's a human being, right? Everyone like there's no one that's gonna sit here and really say they want to make less money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's important to align the incentives so that when the firm is more efficient and does a better job for the client, that's better for the firm and they can process more cases and make more money, right? They help more people, they make more money. Whereas if you're at a firm that bills by the hour and you guys become more efficient, I mean, I don't care how nice of a person you are, you're not gonna be happy that your revenue number keeps going down, week over week, right? So I think you have to align those incentives in some way.
You think you will see subscriptions in law firms?
Yeah, some do it. Some have subscriptions. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Pay us this fee every month and we'll solve X and Y cases for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's like
Subscriptions.
literally a retainer model, right? So
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
retainer. Same as the SaaS. It's a retainer. You pay us this a month, you can use our system.
Yeah, but I think it's a little bit different from a retainer because I think what lawyers normally do is they bill against a retainer. So like you're gonna do a contested divorce, you pay family law attorney 5K for a retainer, and then when they start working, like then they'll bill against it. So say they bill like $500 an hour, that will give you 10 hours and they just take it out of the retainer. But
Yeah.
like by the time they've reviewed all your documents and before you even go to trial, you're already burned through the 5K. You have to give them another like 5K or 10K or whatever, you know?
yeah, okay, yeah. But do you feel that this is going to happen across the board, or there's going to be a percentage of law firms that are actually going to be changing their billable model? Because we've seen pressures on billable model for the past, quite a lot. Year, like more than 10 years. There's, I think, way more. There's talks around, how firms need to change the billable model, and before it was automations. Before Gen AI, it was the automation was the hot thing, and that was supposed to be the big change of how things are done, but it didn't. Right? Still, most firms kept the billable model.
Yeah.
I think they will still do. I don't think that will change ever, to be honest.
I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
there's going to
No
be.
matter how good your AI becomes, I don't think, and they use it, I don't think they will change the billable.
That's the thing. So with the clients that you've guys worked, do you see that they, in the end, when they see successful implementation of AI within their system, do they also go ahead and start thinking about changing the actual billable model and the pricing structure?
You know, the thing that I've seen is the ones who are more interested in AI, they already don't use billable hour. They use like flat
That's
fee.
true. Yes.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah.
they already see like direct correlation
Yes.
between us doing more things more efficient and making more money, right? And I think also it's like I think the billable hour question is not really it's not necessarily an AI question. I think AI is just forcing
Mhm.
people to think about what's wrong with it. But it's really a business model question, right? It's like you charge based on the value you give to the client instead of the time that you spend on the thing. Because there's always this problem of like, again, if your incentive is the more time I spend or the more time I bill for this, the more money I make, people are always going to try to bill as how many hours as they can, basically, right? And I think that's fundamentally misaligned with the client because the client wants things done
Yeah.
as efficient as possible. So I think what I've seen is the firms that are interested in like being more tech forward and modern, they already don't do stuff on billable hour.
Yeah.
They do stuff on flat fee already.
True. Yeah, I had the same experience, but I didn't have an experience yet where a successful AI implementation would cause a firm to completely rethink their billable model. That I
Yeah,
haven't. Yeah.
yeah. I
I
think it's
don't think
not.
we will see that.
Yeah, it's unrelated. I think to some degree, it's unrelated. It's related and not related. But I think like the decision to change from the billable hour, like AI and clients are gonna put more pressure on firms to change it. But I think it's still an internal decision of like how the firm operates. And I think
Mhm.
like a firm that's based on flat fee, they're gonna be flat fee regardless of if they have AI or not AI. They're just flat fee firms. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also the discussion: do you need to tell your client you're using AI? No.
Yeah. You
So why
do.
change? So why? No, you don't.
Yeah. If you're
As
in
a law
the
firm, you have to tell your client, I'm using AI to do the work. No.
yes,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
you have
By
to
law?
disclose that. Yeah, no, by law, by American Bar Association Formal Opinion 512, you need to disclose that. Yeah.
Well, then you need to change the billing model at one time.
Yeah.
No, but like honestly, like if you're using, which is
I didn't know.
which is interesting. Remember we were discussing what's the difference now with the data processing risk AI enterprise plan versus your Microsoft 365 enterprise plan, right? There's not really a difference, right?
No.
And so, yeah. So if you think of it from that perspective, why would you have to disclose you're using AI? Because you don't have to disclose you're using Microsoft Outlook, for example, right?
Exactly.
Because if you have an enterprise plan, they're not training on your data anyways. So there should be a correction in America in Formal Opinion 512. If you're using an enterprise version, you don't have to disclose you're using AI.
No, but does it mean that if you use Legora, you have to state that I use Legora, which is an AI?
No,
Or
you should state
I
how you're
harden.
using AI. Yeah. Like I'm using it to process these types of documents, or I'm using it basically for the intake flow.
Okay.
You got to disclose this. Like your documents are going to be processed by AI.
And there is no other questions than that. That's interesting.
We're missing Stefan. He's a lawyer. He could tell.
Yeah,
He can
we
explain
need
this.
Stefan back. We need to grill him on this one.
But I think it's also different in Europe. I think if
haven't
you're a
seen
high risk, sorry,
I haven't seen any laws stating that you have to.
what does the EU AI Act say on that topic? That's an interesting one.
More of, well, that's that covers a lot. But that's more on what kind of models you use.
Like for what you can use AI or not. Like they're basically dividing
where
it
you
into
can use it.
Yeah.
So you can't use it in health because it's personal records. Research, some research are good, some are not. Not in military at all. I mean, there is different rules for it. But you also need to log what kind of models you use, how they are trained. The data sets should be open so you can actually evaluate them, but nobody has that. So
Yes, I agree with. So we had a comment. We have a comment from Sarah. There's also certain types of law that are easier to automate because the volume is more predictable, so it's easier to assign a flat fee. Other types of law might require 10,000 or 50,000 hours to get the same task done, depending how the task evolves. And it's hard to assign a flat fee. True. And also, I think one metric to determine whether it's a candidate to assign a flat fee or not is how standardized can the process be. Because if the process always looks different, then it's much harder to box it into a flat fee structure. Yeah. Okay, we're 15 minutes over time. But yeah, this happens when you're not prepared for sessions, how we like to keep it. And we decided we're going to do Masai. Yeah, maybe we can also inform you and the audience at the same time. Frode and I were discussing, are you okay with doing these sessions bi-weekly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so that was also an announcement to everybody that might be watching. We're going to be doing these sessions bi-weekly. Have a great one, guys. Thanks for joining and see you in 2 weeks.
Yep, happy week.
That wrapped up today's LinkedIn Live session. As you heard, there's still a lot of open questions around how reliable these agentic systems really are and how law firms should think about guardrails. Controlled workflows with human in the loop are still the go-to approach for regulated use cases today. If you enjoyed these conversations, we host them bi-weekly on Saturdays live on LinkedIn, and we take the questions from the audience throughout. Make sure to follow along so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching and see you there.